Stay locked to Connecting with Dave Lester Payne, right here on Observer Radio 91.1 FM.
Thank you for staying with us right here, of course, on News Observer Radio. And let me say a very pleasant good afternoon to Mr. MP Asot Michael, representing, of course, he's a representative in Parliament for the St. Peter's constituency. I just want folks to know that it's going to be a series. This is just part one, and we'll get into it. But based on Mr. Michael's idea of how he wants the general public to follow him, we start from the genesis of Mr. Michael, his family being in Antigua and Barbuda, and why you think you have Antigua at heart based on the roots of your family.
Good afternoon, Dave. Good afternoon to the listening public of Observer. It's a pleasure and honor to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And good afternoon to the great people of St. Peter's constituency. And I would like to say I'm very happy to be here in the studios.
I'm glad that you're here.
Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm. So we start off by chronicling things that you think is so important to the listeners to know that you didn't just fly off a tree. The roots are here.
Oh, definitely. You know, my family have been here for probably the Michael family and the Lebanese family in Antigua and Barbuda, probably 150 years now. A very rich history. And we have made significant contributions to the economic, social, cultural development of this country. At the risk of sounding immodest, I think that the Lebanese have been the bulwark of the commercial development of this country, long before many business people have come to the Antigua and Barbuda. And we have made significant contributions over the decades to the development of this country, that we consider ourselves true patriotic Antiguans and Barbudans. However, I'm cognizant, Dave, of the unease suffered by some persons over my decision when I first entered elective politics and by contesting a seat in the democratically House of Representatives back in 2004. And, you know, Dave, this is really a thorny issue which I think I should deal with in a forthright way today, in an open and straightforward way, because I cannot ignore it. And no one has yet meaningfully questioned my ability, my qualifications to represent people at the highest level in the House of Representatives. But sadly, however, my critics and even, certain colleagues and even, I would say, the political leader of the Antigua and Barbuda Labour Party have questioned whether a white, wealthy, young Antiguan should aspire to the highest level of political power in Antigua and Barbuda. And it's clear to me that now that they have seeking to exclude me, to eradicate me from that essential part of our country's life, which the Constitution of Antigua and Barbuda, which we all know, keeps open to every single person, no matter your race, your ethnicity, your background, your color. It's determined by the qualifications set down therein in the Constitution. And this is a matter of very deep regret for me, personally. Because hundreds of non-black families who ever settled in Antigua over the centuries to make this beautiful country their home, and indeed to persons such as myself, my family, for generations, this is the only home that we have known. And we consider ourselves true Antiguans and proud Antiguans who have made our contribution to this country, to the development. And my family is not white. I've never ever considered myself white. So, in the historical, social, political sense of the word white, and to denote a first world European or North American person who dictated the life of Antigua and Barbuda for all those years prior to independence. We are Lebanese, Dave. And we are Lebanese from a very, very poor farming, simple peasant village located very high up in the mountains where hard work, love of God, love of family, love of fellow men. That's what dictates our values, the hope for the future for one's children, for one's country. And our great-grandparents, it's important that I set the record straight today and set it straight. We were poor peasants, poor farmers who emigrated to the West over 150 years ago. We came on, cargo boats, landed in New York, Staten Island. We were deported, stamped deported. Got on cargo boats, some ended up in Guadeloupe, some in Trinidad, Venezuela, Antigua, and that's why there was so much Lebanese in the Caribbean. The point is that we worked hard, educated our children, so that future generations would not have to work as physically hard as their parents and our grandparents did. But we had a dream, and we succeeded in business, and their success was attributable to the honest and straightforward, caring way in which they treated customers, the customers and their employees, that their kindness and the philanthropy to the church, the schools, and to the fellow men. I mean, you take, for example, someone like my uncle, the late Mitchell Michael. People like Keith Edwards' father, Charles Edwards. He started out in business. The present Governor General, Sir Ernest Williams, worked with him right there on Corn Alley in Mitchell A. Michael, which we know as Continental. Kenneth Gomez, Mr. Dinellis, Brian and Richard Dinellis' father. A lot of people passed through there. And my ancestors, like Mitchell and Morris and my late grandfather, Asot Michael, they died in peace with their conscience that their God, they fulfilled their dream. So some people say we are not white because we are Arab. Others say we certainly don't behave like the original white people, the colonial English, who exploited black people in this country for 400 years. We did not inherit the ethic of the colonizer. We are certainly not the descendants of slave owners. So people in this country never, ever associated us with the colonizers. We succeeded the English and the Scottish merchants because we had success over them. We gave credit. My great-grandfather traveled and traversed this country with a crocus bag around his back. From town to Bethesda, to Freetown, to Willowkeys, to Parham, giving credit. We were the first to set up credit. The Syrians came long after us, like old man Mr. Hadid and so forth, and they learned from us and did the same. And I must say it's the black indigenous Antiguans who gave us food and water and took us shelter into their homes and treated us with respect. So it's a love, it's a bond of friendship that we developed between the customers and our great-grandparents and grandparents. So I just want to say that we are proud of that, and let not that success be turned into a negative mark against me by my rivals and my critics. Let not my kindness, Dave, and my generosity to others, now that I'm in politics for the last 18 or 20 years, be used by jealous persons to criticize and malign me and say that, I use my philanthropy to bribe persons for doing what I have been taught to be an honorable and Christian duty, which is to help people. Because I just want to say that I inherit those genes in my DNA. I can't help but to know that, when I go to sleep at night, Dave, that I can help people that are less fortunate than I am. And I do it out of love. I do it because I feel that this country has been good to my family over the generations. And I was fortunate to have been born into a family that worked hard and achieved, as I said, relative success. And we have enough to satisfy our immediate needs, and thank God sufficient left over to tend to the needs of others. And it is that spirit, Dave. It is in that spirit of my family to reach out to and assist persons less fortunate than me that causes me to help people. It is part of our culture into which I was born, just as our affinity for business, that, and good food. We love good food too. What is the ethos which drives my kindness to others? It's not just about politics. My late grandfather was like that. My father, Patrick Michael, Morris Michael, he was a philanthropist. I cannot see people in need and turn a blind eye. There's no joy in basking in the glory of hefty deposits in a bank account. There's none. Or in a commercial bank. But it's an unending pleasure for me to see and appreciate faces of those whom I have helped over the years. So I just want to say, It is the ethos which drives my kindness to others. That really is the hallmark of the life that, Tim Hector wrote of Morris Jerome Michael, my late uncle, when he died. He said money for Morris Michael was not only to be made and accumulated, it was, to put it simply, to be used for the social good. And in this respect, he's an enduring and immortal example. And no tribute to Morris Michael can recount, and I quote from the Outlet newspaper, the numerous acts of social good from which he himself led no benefit to derive. For instance, when I was going off to university, and this is Tim, he sent to call me, spoke in casual terms, and when I was leaving, he casually gave me an envelope in which there was a note, an encouragement, and some money. Not a few, I'm told, could give similar testimony. Morris Michael in his life received no national honor. However, this nation has produced few more notable citizens, few more noteworthy patriots, and they know it. It remains a fact unquestionably low that he achieved the highest honor this country can bestow, in that Morris Jerome Michael was held and will be held in the highest regard by citizens great and small, not for his generosity of spirit alone, but because of how he lived and what he did in that life recently ended. He was the citizen's citizen. And just permit me, Dave, I know we don't have a lot of time, but many people do not know that the same Morris Michael, he transformed the entire outlook of the city of St. John's.
St. John's.
St. John's, yes. The housing developments that he reshaped the whole southwestern outlook of the capital. Through his efforts, his vision, his complete agglomerations have sprung up, and today they represent the most beautiful expansion of the city. Otter's Newtown, Radio Range and its heights, acres, hundreds and hundreds upon acres, all on All Saints Road. The American Road would have remained barren were it not for his will to develop them into housing areas. He flattened hundreds of acres of land, opened roads, built gutters, brought in electricity and water. This was a gigantic task, all during the 1960s and early 1970s with Leo Gore. Then he would have virtually chiseled, I apologize. He actually chiseled where the hospital is. It was a huge hill, Dave.
That's where Mount St. John
Mount
is.
St. John.
Mm-hmm.
And he chiseled that hill at a lot of cost. And it was known as Otter's Bluff, into what is today on the map Michael's Mount, now the Celeste Bird Medical Center. He did this to honor his father, Anthony Michael, my great-grandfather. You remember you had Castle Harbour and Flamingo Hotel up there. And then he crowned the city of St. John's with the jewel of that building, the Mount, the beautiful Michael's Mount. You remember Carnival Bowl also, where the cancer center is. And this was an impossible dream, made possible with grit, relentless courage. But he built so many roads, brought electricity, water, all into Radio Range. All that whole village he did. And then his brother Mitchell now did ovals, otters, all there where the Catholic Church was. It was a rubbish dump in the 1950s. Lester Bird told me when he was going off into study into Michigan in 1959. When he came back, he could not believe it was transformed. That Mitchell built, I think, 50-something houses across the road there.
But did he do them in tandem with Sir V.C. Bird?
Yes, well, actually, he did them. He built the houses. It was a rubbish dump. He bought the land from Barrow, I think. And then he actually backed the loans because a lot of those persons could not even get the financing from Royal Bank of Canada. And he actually backed the loans for those persons. A lot of them are policemen and civil servants, and they could not access the loans. And one day the manager of the bank, after he backed about 13 of the 50-something homes, the bank manager called him and said, Mr. Mitchell, you know what you're doing? Suppose these people defaulted on the loans. He said, you don't worry. They will all pay their loans. I have endorsed and I'm the guarantor. They will pay them. And they did all pay. And he developed that whole housing development there, right there. in ovals. The church, he actually donated the church to the Catholic Church. So they were pioneers. He actually built, the two Michael brothers built the first indigenous hotels in Antigua, Michael's Mount Hotel, and then you had Atlantic Beach Hotel out at Crosby's, Mitchell built. I think it's now owned by Cecil Charles. I don't know the new name that is renamed, Atlantic Beach Hotel, out at Crosby's. And then even St. Joseph's Academy. Mitchell bought the lands for the St. Joseph Academy because the Christian brothers did not have the money at the time. And then he was the chairman of the building committee for the St. Joseph Academy. He was very instrumental in doing that. I think that was back in 1971, Atlantic Beach Hotel. It was opened under the PLM government when Sir George Walters was premier. In those days, he did not get any duty-free concessions. There was no duty-free concessions. But as a local Antiguan, he was instrumental in building that. But the property in St. Joseph's Academy was in 1958. He bought it from a gentleman called T.F. Burroughs, where the St. Joseph Academy sits today. And he became the chairman of the building committee and went there every afternoon to oversee the construction. So they were really very patriotic. Mitchell, Michael, Morris, and Asot. In fact, when Antigua and Barbuda became an associated state with Great Britain in 1967, association before independence, the late Vier Cornwall Bird, the Antigua government did not have the money to have the state dinner when Princess Margaret came to represent Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth. And you had to have the state official dinner. And it was the three Michael brothers who put up the money to have the state dinner. It was held at Dry Hill, where I lived. And
that's where the state dinner was held?
The state dinner was held down there, I think with about maybe 1,000 persons.
Well, they got the land space for it down there.
Yes, and Errol Barrow was there, and Burnham was there, President Errol Barrow and Burnham, and also Lester Pearson. I think the Premier of Canada also was there, and Princess Margaret, the state dinner. And the three Michael brothers paid for it for the government of Antigua and Barbuda. They were really patriotic, and they made their contribution to this country in education, in culture, carnival, I mean, every single float. Morris did so much for Brute Force Steel Band and Hell's Gate and all of the different floats at carnival. So did my father Patrick too. So I think, they've really made their contribution. Morris was the first president and charter member of the JCs and the Lions Club for many, many years. So I think that, in a small way, I followed in their footsteps. I'm not here just to blow my trumpet, but just to say that, we have a rich history intertwined with the people of this country. And I don't want people to think just because I'm in politics that my benevolence and my kindness and my generosity is just about, buying votes or trying to win people over. It's in our DNA to help people and to love people. This country has been extremely well to our family, and we have been good to this country too.
So, Mr. Michael, why is it that you think that, of course, at this point in time, after the contribution that your family would have made, you would have made in modern time to the Antigua Labour Party, this veil is cast over you?
Well, I want to just say that, my family and the Labour Party go back to Sir Vier Cornwall Bird. We have always been a member of the Labour Party, supportive of V.C. Bird, from my grandfather, the late Asot Michael, Morris Michael, all the Michaels, and especially my father. I mean, even as kids, he was one of the first employers to always celebrate Labor Day, and as you know, Labor Day is really for the employees, and he would march with V.C. Bird. He would dress up all his children in red, of course, and we would march aside Celesta. And I recall as a child one Labor Day, and we were in opposition, of course, he bought out all of the red cloth, and he lined off both sides of Market Street, from down by CJ's in those days, not the bus, not from V.C. Bird's bus, but right down from the market, right up to the top of Showell's by the police station. Bought it out from all of his sisters. in defiance of the PLM, and we were in opposition. And he was very close to V.C. Byrd. In fact, my father was instrumental in coming up with the notion of the abolition of personal income tax, to get back the ALP into power in 1976. It was right on my veranda that he came up with that notion and put it in the minds of the late Sylvester Byrd and Hugh Marshall Sr. and Sir Ronald Saunders, and they can attest to that. Well, Mr. Marshall is still alive, and Sir Ronald Saunders. But he was very, very close and made a lot of sacrifices for the Labour Party. In fact, even the Antigua Trades and Labour Union, when it was a wooden building and they wanted to convert it into bricks and concrete, my father was instrumental in raising the funds out of his personal finances and so forth. And every single fundraising activity was there to help in the dark days between 1971 and 1976 to assist Sir Ernest Williams and Sir Adolphus Freeland and all of the people in the Antigua Trades and Labour Union, V.C. Byrd and so forth, Robin Bascus, and all of those persons would come, and my father was always there for the Labour Party. I remember George Walters and Donald Halstead would try to get my father to support them when they were in power, and my father was one of the few business persons that refused. He was very loyal. And when he died, Sir Lester Byrd wrote his eulogy and said that he lived in the heart of loyalty, not in the heart of expediency. He was extremely loyal to the Antigua Labour Party, and he raised his children like that, all three of us. So
that's where your loyalty lie, as far as the Antigua Labour Party is concerned.
Oh yes. And I will always be loyal to the Labour Party. I see the Labour Party not being owned by any one person. I mean, the Labour Party is not owned by Gaston Bong. I've said so. It's not owned by me. I mean, it's an organization that has a rich history and has done a lot for the country. It's born of the struggles of the working class people. I have a lot of respect for that institution. It has really done a lot for the betterment of the poor people of this country. I believe in the philosophy of the Labour Party, and I will not walk away from the Labour Party.
But you have no choice now in this the next election when it's due, because you're not part of the ticket for the Antigua Labour Party.
Well, I'm not sure that I'm not part of the ticket. I mean, there's a court judgment. I have the court judgment here. There's a declaration that still stands, and there's a court order that, for your benefit and for the benefit of your listeners
and viewers,
and I can quote from this court judgment. And this court judgment dated April the 19th, 2022, delivered by Her Ladyship Justice Robertson J. And on page 8, and I will leave it with you, paragraph 34, it says, and in crave indulgence, it says the submission of counsel for the applicant claimant, which is myself. It says in paragraph 34, contractual relationship exists between the applicant claimant and respondents on how the parties should conduct themselves as members of the ABLP. The respondents have breached the agreement. The respondents, for the benefit of the viewers and listeners, Mary Claire Hurst, Paul Chet Green, and Gaston Brown. And the respondents have breached the agreement in a material manner by 1. Undermining the applicant's claimant's position as a member of the Central Executive by holding meetings to his exclusion. 2. Undermining the position of the applicant claimant as a member of the constituency branch of St. Peter by holding meetings to his exclusion. And 3. Undermining the applicant's claimant's position by naming Rawdon Turner as the Antigua and Barbuda Labour Party candidate for the upcoming national elections, contrary to the express provisions of the revised constitution, which mandated that there must be communication from the constituency of St. Peter to the Central Executive indicating that Rawdon Turner has expressed an interest in representing the constituency and to allow for a primary to be held. Then it goes on, and she ordered on page 26, paragraph 96, As a consequence of the foregoing, this court orders that upon the claimant, applicant, giving an undertaking, that is myself, Asot Michael, to abide by any order in damages that the court shall deem to have been sustained to the defendants, respondents, as a consequence of this order, it is later determined that the injunction ought not to be granted. It is ordered that the defendants, respondents, are hereby restrained by themselves, their servants and or agents, or otherwise from holding out directly or indirectly any person to represent the constituency of St. Peter on behalf of the Antigua and Barbuda Labour Party, who is not selected in accordance with the provisions of the revised constitution of the Antigua and Barbuda Labour Party.
But Mr. Michael, after all that is said and done, there was another convention that revised the convention.
Can I read 97, sir?
Go right ahead.
And this will answer your question, which I hope.
Okay.
An interim declaration is granted that Warden Turner was not selected in accordance with the provisions of the revised constitution of Antigua and Barbuda Labour Party. The interim injunction to stand until the hearing and determination of this action, or until there are fresh actions or proceedings initiated and conducted in accordance with the revised constitution of the Antigua and Barbuda Labour Party. Now, Mr. Payne, the key words here are until the hearing and determination of this action, or until there are fresh actions, proceedings initiated and conducted. Yes, there have been a convention.
They did.
Yes, but they can't have a convention. The Labour Party has the right to have a convention. The convention then, if they pass new resolutions, they do have to go back to the court and say to the court, listen, we have had a convention. We have named Warden Turner as the candidate for St. Peter. So we are applying to the court. I should not be telling them how to do their work. We are applying to the court to set aside this judgment. And the reasons why we are applying to the court to set aside the judgment. Until they do that, Mr. Payne, they are in contempt of court. They can be put in prison. They're not above the court. There is a judgment outstanding. We can seek contempt proceedings immediately. You cannot disobey a court order and just go to a convention and have a judgment outstanding against you. We're saying you cannot name any other candidate but Asot Michael. Yes, you have the right to go to the convention. And by the way, that will be a whole other thing, because that convention is totally null and void.
How is it so, sir?
Oh, sir, they were supposed to give notice, 45 days notice or 30 days, all the names of the delegates, and Mr. Gaston Brown knows that, and Senator Mary Claire Hurst is supposed to be submitted to a special committee called a credentials committee. Suppose somebody wanted to challenge the officers. Suppose someone wanted to challenge for political leader or the chairman or for the general secretary. There was no notice.
So that was not there?
Absolutely none. The whole convention was null and void. Sir, I've been through many conventions with John St. Luce and Lester Bird and the leadership and Gaston Brown. 2 conventions with Gaston Brown and Lester Bird. I know the process inside out. 2 conventions with Lester Bird and John St. Luce. You cannot tell me that you are going to have a convention and you just absolutely disregard your own rules for the convention, no proper notice. I'm an executive member by being the parliamentary representative, and no notice was even given to me, not even an official invitation.
So why would the legalese would have allowed the Antigua Labour Party to hold such a convention and make a declaration after?
Why would what, sir?
The legal side for the Antigua Labour Party, the folks who advise them legally.
I have no idea, sir. I have no idea. I could not answer that question.
Because based on what I would have heard, you're done and dusted as far as the Antigua Labour Party is concerned, based on the convention that they had, because they changed the rules that you took them to court for.
But, sir, the convention in itself, and I really should not be giving them legal advice here.
You don't have to.
I don't have to. But the convention itself is null and void. I would not say nothing more about it. But all I would say to them, the convention is null and void, and in due course they will know that. But number two, and more importantly, they're in contempt of court, of this court order. They do have to come back to court to ask the judge to set aside this judgment.
And that has not been done.
That has not been done. And you know, if Asot Michael was a different person, he would have already gone to court the day after the convention to start contempt proceedings against them. If I was a different person, and many people have been encouraging me to do it, including my legal counsel, they're in contempt. As of today, I am still the legal representative and the only candidate for the Antigua and Barbuda Labour Party, despite what their convention have said. And the other thing, why I'm so certain that they do know that, why haven't they gone on the press and held out Warden Turner? Don't you notice that they have not made no boulala or no big public statement? And I challenge Mr. Gaston Brown or Mary Clare or Mr. Paul Chet Green or Mr. Maxers to publicly put out a statement and name Warden Turner tomorrow morning as the representative for St. Peter. I challenge them to do that.
So what took place at the convention where they would have named him? That you said is null and void.
They have, yes, but they have not. They are very careful.
They have not published
They
it.
have not published, or they have not come out publicly, neither the Prime Minister on his radio station, and held out. Because if you read the wording of the judgment, they cannot hold out anybody. They must come out and they must publicly declare and say, I publicly declare that Warden Turner is the Antigua and Barbuda Labour Party candidate. They are very careful. They have not done so. They just ratified the 17 candidates, including Warden Turner, but they have not come out publicly and said Warden Turner is the definitive candidate for St. Peter.
So where does that leave you, sir?
Well, according to the judgment, I am the Labour Party candidate.
But why would you want to be among a group of men and women who do not want you?
I'm not sure that there is any group of men and women who do not want me,
In the
except
Antigua Labour Party.
Gaston Brown.
In the Antigua Labour Party.
Except Gaston Brown.
But he's not the only one that would have said things about you and in court.
No.
They represented the same, that the chairperson, of course, who is the Honorable Chet Green, Mary Clare Hurst, I think she's the secretary.
They all have to follow the dictates of Gaston Brown.
They have to?
Oh, yes.
That
They
doesn't-
should not. They should not.
My next question to you was, as we look at the general elections in Antigua and Barbuda, that is due, what's your position? Because if you were not ratified with the 17th candidate, your name is nowhere in that convention as a member of the Antigua Labour Party. They would have disqualified you based on your behavior. What do you do?
No, they didn't say anything about behavior.
So what was the committee that was set up to say you're unfit?
They didn't give any reason.
They did not?
No. I have the full transcript.
So how
In
does
fact, the chairman of the suitability committee voted for me, Mr. Hilroy Humphreys. It was a kangaroo convention. In fact, do you know that one of the members of the suitability committee is the uncle of Mr. Warden Turner?
No, I did not know.
Okay, all right. Anyway, Mr. Payne, let me say this to you.
Mm-hmm.
Asot Michael will be running in the next general elections. The people of St. Peter knows Asot Michael will be running because I've been campaigning every single day, house to house, every single day. Whether I run on the Antigua Barbuda Labour Party or if I run independent, whatever the people want me to do, I will do. If I have to run independent, I will run independent. And I will win my seat independent. I will be the first independent candidate to create history in Antigua and Barbuda. I am very confident of that.
But that's not what you want.
Preferably, I'm an Antigua and Barbuda Labour Party person. I told you I was born into the Labour Party. I'm still a member of the Labour Party, but if I have to run independent, I shall run independent. I can tell you, though, that Gaston Brown, Prime Minister Gaston Brown, has angered so many people in my constituency that they feel so hurt, they feel so cut up, and the resentment is so high in St. Peter's right now that as I go house to house campaigning, that a lot of people, the vast majority of persons, including strong, die-hard Labour Party people, want me to run independent.
But Mr. Michael, while you're running independent and people reflect on what's happening in St. Peter's, there's lots of things that needs to be done.
Oh, yes.
There's the people, they'll take you back to Columbus. If he comes back, he recognize St. Peter's, especially Parham Town. You have been the candidate for over 20 years or so.
18 years.
18 years, okay. With him. So running as an independent and running against the United Progressive Party and the Antigua Labour Party and another party, DNA members, they're all saying that you did nothing.
Well, I can answer that. I can answer that very confidently and very honestly. I can say that both administrations, especially the Antigua and Barbuda Labour Party, has done nothing for my constituency.
Wow.
But I have done a lot for my constituency. But both administrations, the UPP deliberately victimized my constituency, and the Antigua and Barbuda Labour Party, going back to Donald Shepard, Joseph Myers, Longford Jeremy, and myself, have taken the St. Peter's constituency for granted. The St. Peter's constituency and the electors there have voted for the Antigua and Barbuda Labour Party since inception. I think since 1956. I stand corrected. But St. Peter's have never ever voted against the Antigua and Barbuda Labour Party.
But with your persuasive powers, you were with, of course, the national hero, Celeste Bird. You're connected to, of course, the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda. In these modern days, why wouldn't you think it would have been helpful to assist St. Peter's constituency?
Well, when I was the Minister of Public Works, even before I was elected to represent St. Peter's, in my brief stint as Minister of Public Works, I did a lot for St. Peter's. In fact, I was accused by Comrade Hilary Humphreys. He went to Parliament and said that I bursted up the budget and that I was building roads where people did not live, going all the way up to Parham New Extension and to Lindsay's. I did a lot of infrastructure in St. Peter's. We built sidewalks, we built roads in Vernon's estate, up in Lindsay's, in Painters. I mean, we hired nearly 65, 70 small petty contractors. I had Mr. George Ryan even come in to train some of these contractors to make sure we did not waste government resources. I mean, we really set the plan to build a lot of roads, and we accomplished a lot. You know, we had the architect division of public works supervise them properly. We laid the foundations in Vernon's, and shortly after that, when we lost the election, the UPP really halted all of the infrastructure in St. Peter's. But when I was Minister of Public Works up to 2003, we were able to accomplish a lot in about 3 years in terms of infrastructure. The basketball court that in St. Peter's, I built it during the UPP tenure out of my pocket. I got Gortoy and we built it. We spent nearly $800,000. Tiga Brothers did the base, the 2 stands, the bathrooms, and you know, we built back the bathrooms twice. I spent considerable finances from my own pocket maintaining that basketball court, the football field in terms of the lights, the fence, and so forth. But the UPP did victimize us for 10 years. A lot of the workers that we employed, because I was Junior Minister of Finance also, We employed a lot of workers at the port, the Antigua Port Authority, and also at the Ministry of Public Works. They were the first to go home. Mr. Wilmer Daniel victimized them and fired them and sent home nearly all of the workers from the Antigua Port Authority that were employed by myself at the Antigua Port Authority and Public Works. But I spent considerable finances for my family, resources, and myself during 2004 to 2014 because the UPP did absolutely nothing for us.
But the Antigua Labour Party, until, of course, the debacle that came up in Parliament, you were part of that administration. The housing stock in St. Peter's, when we hear the individuals that speak about it, it's one of Antigua's first city, and Parham Town, with all the necessary amenities that would have done so much for employment for people in that area. The UPP has been out of office for 8-9 years. So what happened between that period of time up to the debacle when they decided that, of course, Mr. Michael is not going to be part of the team?
You're speaking about after 2014 when we got back into power.
Yes.
Well, I have to give credit to the Prime Minister in terms of the housing that he did at Painters. The new housing development, those 76 houses that he did. And that is a nice housing development at Painters. But what I would have wanted to see is the implementation of the OAS study that Lester Bird commissioned back in the late 1990s for the redevelopment of Parham Harbour and the revitalization of all of those historical buildings, the courthouse, the police station, the market, the fisheries, the whole redevelopment of Parham Harbour so that we could have a tourist attraction, a mini place, like how Nelson's Dockyard has been restored because there's so much history in Parham being the first town. And Prime Minister Gaston Brown was very, very well aware of that study that was done by the Organization of American States that Sir Lester Bird had commissioned. Because when we were in opposition, I drew it to his attention. I actually put it into my little mini manifesto when I first went to run in Parham back in 2004. And as Minister of Tourism, he promised me that this would be one of the first projects that he would use some of the CIP money for. And Minister Melford Nicholas could attest to that we discussed it in Cabinet. I discussed it with the Prime Minister. He promised me that he would earmark, at least $3-4 million US to start the project, because it would be a great project. I know that the Hadids also built, Francis Hadid also built a terminal up at Crabs, and that he wanted to do fuel up there, but that was turned down, and then he wanted to do some of the smaller cruise ships to bring up to Parham. And we could have had a lot of shopping and, different tourist attractions up there. But every time that I, even as Minister of Tourism, tried to access the funds and to bring it up in Cabinet and so forth, it was just empty promises, and the Prime Minister kept putting it on hold and then took the CIP monies to do other projects.
But you would have been very close to Prime Minister Gaston Brown. Of course, as far as the talk on the street, you were the financier for the Antigua Labour Party in the last election. Why wouldn't they have been listening to you?
I was the financier or main financier from 2004 to 2014. But once Prime Minister Gaston Brown became Prime Minister, he gave me a huge ministry with a great nomenclature. Minister of Tourism, Economic Development, Investment, Energy. But once he reached where he wanted to reach, in the Cabinet, the Prime Minister listened to himself, and that was it. In terms of my constituency, even infrastructure, I kept saying, Mr. Prime Minister, St. Peter's has a lot of road work that, is really dilapidated. We got nothing done during the UPP, and I need a lot of attention. Mr. Eustace Tico Lake was the minister then. It was not Minister Lennox Weston. And he kept saying to me, well, I have a garrison constituency, and we need to have some patience and let the newcomers that just won their seats, like my Minister Max Fernandez and Samantha Marshall and others that just came into the Cabinet, Melford Nicholas and others, let them get some road works first. Michael Brown and myself and Robin Yearwood and he and so forth, that the Garrison constituencies could have patience and
But, but Mr. Michael, the roads are still in a terrible state.
horrible, even worse now.
What I want to know from you, and I'm listening to you, because you would have chronicled your parents' involvement in the development of Antigua and Barbuda, and at the time, the Antigua Labour Party was the only party. There was no other party. So the only party they could be part of was the Antigua Labour Party. So that worked for them. They would have invested money. You now would have grown up. You went off to England. You came back, and you're part of the Antigua Labour Party. You would have, I don't know the facts. I'm just telling you what I was told. You would have financed many of the conventions. You would have financed many things for the Antigua Labour Party into getting them back into office. So why wouldn't they listen to you?
I told you, Mr. Payne, that the Prime Minister listened until the way he reached. He no longer needed me. He stopped listening. Dispose you.
So why would you want to be with a party like that?
Well, it's not a matter of party.
It's what?
It's a leader.
Oh.
He doesn't own the party.
So the folks who are listening in St. Peter's, because you see, we can't just think about St. Peter's. The Prime Minister is the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda. You are an elected member of Parliament who served for 18 years.
That's correct.
In this country. You have never lost your seat. So when individuals or parties, new or old, are demonstrating and of their campaigning, they have to look at what did not happen. They can't say this was supposed to happen and the Prime Minister didn't do it. They're going to blame you, sir.
That's correct.
So what do you do in circumstances like that?
I speak the truth. The evidence is there. The evidence is there that the clinic in Parham has been dilapidated, and I've got up in Parliament every single budget since the Labour Party is in power in 2014. I made appeals to Minister Morwen Joseph.
Money's well allocated for that?
Absolutely none was allocated. I went to Cabinet. I've asked, I've pleaded, I've begged Minister Joseph to build a brand new clinic, and promises and promises and promises. When I see they're getting monies from the Chinese government to build different ones across the country, and the one in Piers is non-existent for over 8-9 years, and the one in Parham is the worst run-down, ramshackle clinic. Is a disgrace. It should be shut down also. And when I get up in Parliament and I speak about it, Minister Morwen Joseph on one occasion got up and walked out and slammed the door. And you know what he did the next week? He sent prison officers from Her Majesty's prisons in assault to the people of Parham and St. Peter's to put on some old galvanized sheets because the clinic was leaking. You know what they did during COVID? When I had to appeal and call for the masks, after weeks we received it. Sometimes the blood pressure machines don't even work up there. Have to donate them. Sometimes we're short of the strips to take people that has diabetes.
You finance those things?
Yes. It's a disgrace. We don't even have a veranda or a gallery for the elderly to sit on. So when it's raining and in the hot sun, they don't even have chairs to sit on. It's a disgrace.
But this is the Antiguan Labour Party.
Yes, it is. And then people say, what has Asot Michael done? So what do they want me to do now? Go into my resources and build a brand new clinic? Like I built the basketball court twice out of my pocket?
What happened to the police station?
It's a disgrace. Do you know the police van got into an accident 3 weeks or a month ago, and they're giving the policemen a little car to drive in to go and solve crime in Parham and St. Peter's? They can't even replace. And I'm appealing to Commissioner Rodney today. It's a disgrace. I went up to the police station twice in the last 2 weeks. And they have a little old car driving, not even a pickup, because the pickup was damaged. And they mashed down the historical police station, not even built back a proper police station. Contempt for St. Peter's with everything. Destroyed the courthouse, the historical courthouse. No proper planning, nothing.
But you were the Prime Minister's ace.
No, this police station was just done recently.
No, I'm saying I'm looking at the 8 years since the
I
Prime
was
Minister.
not. From the day he became prime minister, he discarded me. I was not no ace.
No?
Absolutely not.
But weren't you one of the convention who, of course...
Oh, yes. Oh, definitely. I was ace plus to make him leader.
That's what I'm saying, the ace.
Oh, yes. But once he achieved what he wanted to achieve. But that's for a different day. There was no ace after 2014. Every single thing. The Prime Minister looked at me last election, 2018, prior to it, when I asked him, when am I going to get roads? He said, oh, you don't need roads. The people love you. You're going to win your seat anyhow. I said, love, Mr. Prime Minister. You've been promising me roads since we won in 2014, asking me to have patience.
These
They
are
can't take
human
love
beings.
to the bank.
These are
These
human
people,
beings.
these people pay taxes. They're Antiguans. They pay taxes. And I had to go into my pocket and spend millions of dollars and buy Orlean, buy stone, graders, and rent heavy-duty equipment all across this country. Rent heavy-duty equipment from nearly every single heavy-duty equipment operator, graders, rollers, backhoes, bulldozers.
They were paid through the treasury?
And paid for out of my pocket, spent over $3 million and grade roads and build roads last election. I had to bring in over 780 street lights and put them on government lampposts and hire APUA bucket trucks and private bucket trucks and put them up in the nights across St. Peter's, and then spend hundreds of thousands of dollars clearing people cosy trees as I traversed the constituents and people felt unsafe. All in Vernon's estate, Fidget's Creek, Painters, Lightfoot. And I'm still doing it every week out of my pocket. That can't be right. And then I was told by the Prime Minister to my face, the people love you, they will vote for you anyhow. They can't take love to the bank. When you take up millions of dollars of government monies and concrete roads in rural East and Barber Green, every single road in your constituency in Villain Point, and then your concrete roads in rural East, millions and millions. What are the people in St. Peter's? Dogs? So every election, because I have money, I must go into my pocket and build government roads? And then you say Asot Michael has done nothing for the people of St. Peter's? I must build basketball courts out of my pocket and sporting facilities and cut the football fields and continue to do that and put lights on them when the Ministry of Sports is responsible for doing these things? And then send medical stuff and equipment and supplies to the clinic? And we have the worst run-down, ramshackle clinic that leaks without a veranda, without any chairs for the elderly to sit on. And I advocate for these things in Parliament. And then I'm told to shut up and sit down by the Speaker.
The Speaker?
The Speaker of the House, who wants to curtail me and censor me, and nobody votes for him. What is this? I represent people. I represent people. I represent lives. They're Antiguans and Barbudans, and they voted for me. They voted for me 4 times, 2004, 2009, 2014, 2018. And I get the most percentage of the votes in this country, more than any other parliamentarian. And don't come and tell me it's a Labour Party seat, not because they voted for the Labour Party every election, but I've transformed it into Asot Michael seat because I've gotten more votes in terms of percentage than any other Labour Party parliamentarian in this country. And that's because of the love and the sincerity and the genuineness how I reach out to my people. When the government resources can't help them, I help them.
Well, if you're such an asset, sir, why wouldn't they want you in the party?
Because they've become paranoid. They've become paranoid that I want their job. When I've been loyal to them, I've been loyal. I live in the heart of loyalty, not expediency. I stand up for what is right.
So
I don't want their job. If I wanted their job, I could have run for the leadership of the party after Lester Bird. I supported them, and I supported them sincerely, from my heart, to put them where they are today.
Did you support financially?
Supported financially millions of dollars. Nearly went bankrupt and had to sell my property at Lorry Bay. That's a fact. after the 2004 elections, bankrupted myself and my family to put back the Labour Party into power. There was no Hadi, there was no Rob Barrett, there was no Yeader, there was no Barron, there was no CIP investor giving the Labour Party money for between 2004 to 2014. This is thanks I get today to being told that I can't run on a Labour Party ticket, that I'm not suitable.
Well, that's the reason they gave.
Oh, they're giving the reason about England because I was arrested or I was charged or something. I've never been charged up to today. They're trying to get me charged.
But you were never arrested.
Exactly, and then they'd be giving concoction stories and trying to get me charged to embarrass me. How? Okay, they said that I was arrested in England. Why did they put me back to run in 2018 to take more of my money in 2018? It's criminal what they did to me. It's criminal. You fired me whilst I was being interviewed by the police in London in 2017. The interview was not even done and you fired me. And then after, you wanted all my money again in 2018, so you appoint me after you run me in 2018 again, and then you fire me 2 months after because Peter Verdi makes an allegation in the court after you'd already take all my money. Trial was like a carnival. Like a carnival, with all of the Labour Party candidates coming down there for campaign financing, that I didn't even have much time to go into my constituency. I had to be knocking on people's doors at 1 o'clock in the morning. And that is the thanks that Asot Michael gets.
So let's look at the injunction. And, of course, where do you go from there? Because you're saying this would have null and void whatever they would have did as far as the convention that they held.
It is null and void. They have to go back to the court, and they know what they have to do. They have to apply to the court to have this injunction set aside. They've not done that. Well, it says here in paragraph 97, an interim declaration is granted that Rawdon Turner was not selected in accordance with the provisions of the revised constitution of the Antigua and Barbuda Labour Party. The interim injunction to stand until the hearing and determination of this action or until there are fresh actions, proceedings initiated and conducted in accordance with the revised constitution of the Antigua and Barbuda Labour Party. And they have not come back to the court, Mr. Payne, or they have not started any fresh actions or proceedings initiated.
We've got to go based on time, but I'm going to ask you a quick question. If the court validates what you're saying, and they have to have a convention and you're involved, would you challenge any of the seats would you challenge the Prime Minister?
For the leadership?
Yes.
If it's a level playing field, but I can tell you, it's not going to be a level playing field. They won't even disclose the names of the delegates. You think they will? Absolutely not. This is not the Labour Party that is a democratic institution. This is a dictatorship.
On that note, sir, I promise you that, of course, I'm going to bring you back for part 2, and that will be in the next 2 weeks because, like I told you, I'm going off on vacation as of Monday, the 15th. I'll be back on the 29th, and that will be a Monday, so we'll book it for the Wednesday after that Monday.
Thank you so much, and I want to thank you for the opportunity for being here today. I want to thank your great listeners. I want to thank Antigua and Barbuda. I just want to say to stand firm, and I just want to say to all of my constituents, I love you all. I'll be coming out again this evening every single day, doing my house to house, whether I run for the Labour Party or whether I have to run independent. Mr. Michael is running. Mr. Michael will be representing you in the upcoming election. Okay? You all know the size of my heart, the color of my blood. You know how I love and respect all of you. And I know that you love me. Continue praying for me. I feel your prayers. And I love you very much, St. Peter. And may God continue to bless Antigua and Barbuda. I love this country. And I'll continue standing up for what is right for Antigua and Barbuda. Thank you, Dave. Thank you for having me.
Welcome. You're welcome. Thanks a lot for being with us today. That's a wrap in connecting with Dave Lester Payne. Of course, we have the MP for St. Peter's, Mr. Asot Michael. And, of course, we'll have a part 2 when I get back from vacation. Because there's more that we haven't scratched. And we'll get into the heat of it. By then, we probably will know when is election.
Thank you.
That's a wrap.
Okay.
That's a wrap. Stay tuned for Evolution Drive Time.
You've been listening to Connecting with Dave Lester Payne on Observer Radio 91.1 FM.